Okay, we're going to get started with the webinar here very shortly. I've got a number of people dialing in today. Really appreciate everyone's time. The voice you're hearing is Chad McDaniel with Execs in the Know, and talk about this new normal work from home. Right as we were starting the webinar, our internet service in our area went down, so I'm calling in via the phone. But the great news is we've got Shelby and Simon on camera with us here today, and we have a great conversation planned, and I can't wait. Shelby, I just saw a quick check here. You can hear me, everything's okay, and I'm ready to get started.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, well, hey, I hope everyone's doing well. Hard to believe August came and gone fairly quick. Kids are back in school or going back to school. No matter where you're listening today or joining us, thank you for being part of today's session, because we do have a very important conversation, but a real conversation I want to dive into with today's discussion. So it's really, we had fun with the title a little bit, Hey Joe, who loves rock music, AI-driven personalization that will make your heart sing. So a little fun with the title, but I'm looking forward to it. If we can go to the next slide, I want to talk quickly about today's schedule. So this 60 minutes is going to go very, very fast. We're going to do a very interactive discussion between myself, Chad McDaniel, Shelby, and Simon from Nuance, great partners of our community. And then we're going to definitely make sure we get audience participation and audience asking. So after today's session, you will get a recording with everything as far as the links, the slides, what you're seeing today. We hope you share that with your community, your network, just to help get the learning and sharing. Execs in the Know is a corporate CX sharing community. If we could go to the next slide, I just want to let you know you're going to be seeing some exciting announcements about the Customer Response Summit. We did have to move it to a virtual setting. We were planned to be in San Diego next month, but as we all know what's taking place within the world right now, we had to move it to virtual. October 18th to the 22nd, it's an all-week half-day event with some fantastic speakers that we've got, and very fortunate, so stay tuned for that. If you could go to the next slide just quickly, if you're new to the community, welcome. Your role, your leadership in the community is so important to us. Execs in the Know is your peer sharing community. I've been running the community for the last 12 years, and really it's been fantastic to see the leadership, to see how so many people have grown, evolved, how they're keeping customer first in their organization, employee first within their organization. Just go to our website, execsintheknow.com. All sorts of research, all sorts of information. You're not going at this alone in this journey. We're together. It really is your community, Execs in the Know. And I really want to say thank you to Nuance, because they have been such a great partner over the years and a voice and a thought leadership into our community. And on our next slide here with our advisory board, again, thank you, and a call out to all of them helping make a difference in our industry, growing it, leading it, and we count on their voice all the time. My final thing is, just before we get started on the next slide, if you are a corporate listener, or end user, or a CX, if you're not part of our private online community called Know It All, this is a phenomenal resource that you should leverage, because there is 24/7 conversation, real insights. You can connect with hundreds of other peers in our community. It's just a great place. We'll make sure you get a link to join or get an invite. It's real simple to join, and I hope you'll take advantage of it. Okay, let's go to the next slide, and I want to quickly, before I want to introduce our speakers, and I want to sort of set the stage here. Where we're going to go. Shelby and Simon, first of all, thank you for your time. I know how busy both of you are. I've worked with both of you before. I know I'm in great trusted hands. But with our audience here, maybe Shelby, we'll start with you. Really help our audience understand your role, a little bit about the company, of course, and then Simon, we'll move quickly to you.
Yeah, sure. Hi. Thank you, everyone, first and foremost, for joining. Super grateful to be here with everyone. My name is Shelby Scott, and I'm a Senior Manager of Customer Engagement Strategy at Nuance. In my role, and my team and I actually are really focused on eliminating friction in the customer journey and delivering impactful results to our customers. I have, believe it or not, about 20 years experience in customer life cycle, really specializing in omni-channel solutions. And at Nuance, of course, we have the full suite of solutions from customer engagement. So whether it's proactive notifications to asynchronous chat to your virtual agent and your security and fraud needs, we kind of do it all here at Nuance across the board. Simon?
Yes, thank you, Shelby. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Marchand. I'm Nuance's Chief Fraud Prevention Officer. I come from a little over 10 years of fighting fraud in financial institutions and in telcos, and mostly focused on identity theft questions. Now at Nuance, what I focus on is taking all of the technology that is being developed for customer engagement, for voice recognition, all sorts of great AI-driven tech, and apply those functionalities and those new researches to fraud prevention and authentication. So I think we're going to have a great conversation today on how personalization and fraud prevention and authentication can come hand in hand.
Well, we're audience in great hands, and Shelby and Simon, thank you. And I said if there was anyone that had to not be on camera, I'm glad it's me, because the two of you are much easier on the eyes to watch as we're talking here today. But let me kind of set the stage here, Shelby and Simon, and really want to do is create a valuable conversation for our listeners and the audience that will be listening to this on demand. And I'll set the stage this way, in my opinion, and many others, the great equalizer in today's challenging climate is customer experience. And, we know that customer expectations are higher than in previous years. And I don't know if COVID has even made that higher, more understanding. Maybe in the beginning, maybe that is changed now, but we can talk about it. I know that Simon and Shelby, that PwC had a recent report that stated like 73% of all people point to customer experience as an important factor in their purchasing decisions. And I subscribe to that. I've seen that. I definitely subscribe. However, the concerning piece is, in that same report, only 49% of U.S. consumers say companies provide a good customer experience today. And that's a little disappointing to me. I'm thinking about the years of running the community where what still are the roadblocks, what's causing that. And I do know that smart brands, and we have many of them, see this as an opportunity to differentiate themselves. So in commentary to set the stage here, I know one surefire way to accomplish this is through personalized engagements unique to each customer. At their best, these experiences combine insights, human empathy, and technology innovations like predictive analytics. I'm sure a lot of you listening you agree with that, to anticipate and meet customers where they are. Really, this has allowed brands, I think, to recognize and serve their customers more efficiently while creating loyalty, trust, and additional revenue, even higher lifetime customer values. And Simon and Shelby, that's the nirvana state. But many companies, we're facing the challenge. And, I think about how personalization is in a meaningful without feeling, how do we stay not feeling intrusive? What are the best practices to do this at scale? What are some of the risks you should be mindful with an AI-driven personalization? And why we have your time, Shelby and Simon, I really hope we can get into some of those pieces. So with that, what I would like to do is let's go to a poll. And Shelby, because I can't see this right now, you're going to have to help push someone's going to have to help push the results. But if we could go ahead and dive in and start a quick poll. Shelby, do you see the poll on the screen right now?
We do.
Okay. So the question is, and audience, please take a minute, give us your thoughts. What comes to mind when you hear personalization? Please be real honest in that. I'd like your feedback. You'll see some of the drop-down options there that are available to you. So if everyone, just take a minute, go on there, let's vote on this. When we think of personalization, what does that mean to you? So I'll give it like 10 more seconds to finish. So if you haven't voted, go real quickly because I want to keep moving. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's close the poll. And if we can share the results, and Shelby, could you read out the results to all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll read them out in terms of like the greatest numbers to the lowest numbers. So the top performer here is tailored offers. So when what comes to mind when you hear personalization? The number one is tailored offers. Number two is when Netflix profile knows I love action movies. Number three is when someone uses my first name during engagement. And number four is the robot overlords who know too much about me, which really, these results are exactly what kind of fall in line with what we're trying to do with the customer journey. Ultimately, I think that, when you hear your name during an engagement, or have Netflix knowing that, you love action movies, it's really about like creating that brand loyalty, right? Reducing churn, increasing those revenue opportunities with the tailored offers, right? Like that's our number one answer here. And of course, we want to make the journey effortless, right? We want to make that customer feel known. And so that's really what we want to talk about today, and how we leverage personalization, layered, of course, with security and fraud, so that, we've got those aspects covered.
Are there, and Simon, and thank you, Shelby, for that thought, but when we see tailored offers and the point of this poll being number one, any reaction or just continued thought? But the difficulty of getting tailored offers too, but any other reaction to that being number one?
Well, I'll say, I think we moved in the past couple of years from personalization being seen as the Netflix example we had, my knowing what I want, what I like, suggesting, the next step or the additional product, trying to upsell. But now that we're looking at tailored offers, we're looking at something more proactive. We're expecting that. We're expecting that if we call in and we're a good, loyal customer, a nice, good, positive, special offer will be made to us. But that exposes a whole new set of potential vulnerabilities in our organizations. Because if I can, as a fraudster, impersonate a potential customer, a VIP customer, then you're also exposing that potential customer to a much higher level of fraud. If you're pushing an offer to someone and all that has to be done is just to agree to said offer, whether it's a new product, a new service, something being shipped, in your hands or anything. So I think it's interesting that we moved from something that's relatively passive, we think you might like this, to eventually being like, hey, let us make you an offer. Why don't you take that new product or that new offering? And it's very interesting to see that through that, there's going to be new risks that need to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, well stated. And audience, as you're listening to what Simon and Shelby are saying, if you have comments, questions, clarifications, please put them in the Q&A box, because I really want us to get any of the myths, concerns, or issues going on with personalization out today, because we've got to continue to discuss and solve this. Shelby and Simon, as we look at the slide here, if we go next, where it talks about personalization is the automatic tailoring of sites and messages to the individuals viewing them, so that we can feel that there's a piece of software that loves us for who we are. Love that from David, the Arthur technologist. When we talk about AI-driven personalization, in quick layman terms, I think we get it, but what's a little bit behind it? What does that mean? Anything further you'd like to articulate for the case study today?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll comment first, and then of course Simon can jump in. But AI-driven personalization is really combining all the things that you know about your customer with technology and a human touch. So most companies have tons of data on their customers. Retailers, what's been purchased by, on what day, by whom, what product. If you're a financial services organization, you know about services your customers have or applications that are in process. You may have, if you're a utility, you know when bills are due and so forth. So all of the AI-driven personalization really leverages those data points along with technical innovations around identification to be proactive in providing information to your customers to really help deliver effective outcomes that are effortless to your customer ensuring security, but also have an element of operational savings or revenue generation opportunity. Simon, anything that you would add there?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think ultimately it all comes down to the use cases and how did you see personalization being articulated in different contexts, and it can go from the way that someone will interact with you. How if you're talking to an agent and they know you, they know your habits, they know proactively what to offer, they already expect what your problem might be. For example, if you're calling an airline, they might know that you're talking because you want an update on your flight status. If you're calling a telco 6 months before the end of your contract, it's probably to get an early upgrade of your device. And all of these aspects of the conversation can allow you to get more quickly to the point in your interaction. Also get a much better interaction overall because you don't have to fight for what you're trying to get to. It's being offered to you. So you feel like you have that privileged contact with your organization. So that's, ultimately contributing to building loyalty, because we know that loyalty isn't built today as it was 10 years ago. It's mostly about the quality of your interactions. It's about the seamlessness, the lack of friction, and about organizations being able to show that they're understanding of their customers and try to give them the impression that they are important and unique, even though we know that there's tens of millions of customers that have to be served by the contact center agents. So yeah, it goes from a specific offering to anticipating the request that's coming your way.
Okay. And this may seem obvious, or maybe it's not obvious, but who can benefit from personalization? And I've wondered, can everyone benefit from personalization, or is it depends. But if we could just quickly talk we have a diverse range of people listening to this webinar. Can everyone benefit from personalization? Does it make sense for everyone?
Yes, Chad, everyone. Everyone.
Okay, well.
But so, everyone who wants to have a good customer experience. I mean, so in a more serious note, what I mean by that, from a Nuance perspective, we're implementing personalization strategies in every vertical. So from retail to banking to telcos. And here's the thing about that. Because our solutions span so many verticals, we can see that personalization strategies really overlap across them all. And personalization done right is really about tweaking the messaging across the journey to be laser focused on the customers. So here's an example. Let's say you bought a new washer and dryer set at a big box retailer, and you're calling in to confirm delivery. Well, once you've been authenticated, that big box retailer can recognize that you didn't sign up for the old washer and dryer haul away. And maybe that's a $30 add-on. And since there's still time to do so, they can offer that through the AI-driven personalization. You're able to sign up. And ultimately, that's what it's about, right? Like making you have the absolute best opportunity to create a great customer experience. And here's an interesting stat, just to add on to that, from a recent Accenture report stating that 91% of consumers are more likely to work with brands who recognize, remember, and provide relevant offers and recommendations.
And I'll add to that, all of this really does help the customer. But if you look on the other side, the ones that can benefit from this are the agents.
Yeah.
Right? If you can have that personalization happening in real time and you can pick up on what's being said and who that person is, instead of having agents kind of go through the same scripts over and over and try to upsell the same products in the same fashion because they have to follow a specific blueprint, well, you can provide them with the tools they need to achieve the goals that they're being set. You can provide them with the right offer at the right time, the right follow-up question, the right opposition to someone pushing back for an offer. All of this can really, really help the agent experience, help them do it faster, more seamlessly, and just overall, remove some of the pressure that they have on their shoulders to always go through the same steps, and instead give them the tools to achieve, like I said, the goals that we're all setting them to sell more, do it faster, and maintain very high customer satisfaction.
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor. We could talk, I think, all day, debate personalization. We have a lot to cover off. And audience, if you got a challenge to this, what we've been discussing, or you have a different viewpoint, I know there's a few questions coming in. Please put your comments, because that's how we learn together, where we see different viewpoints. Simon, I'm going to challenge you just a little bit about the aspect of personalization before we move on, and we do need to get moving on. But what would be an area that someone might not think of immediately? Just a quick example of an area that maybe someone hasn't thought of from when it comes to personalization in the conversation text.
Well, when you start interacting with an organization on the phone, you're starting to speak with an agent or you're talking to an IVR, one thing that we tend to forget when we're focusing on personalization is we are capturing a lot of data that has very, very high value from a security perspective. If you can get the person talking, you can authenticate them. You can determine who that person is before you give them sensitive information or before you move with very high-risk transactions. And it can be done not just identifying the one person you're expecting to call you, but you can start identifying other aspects of who that person is. For example, how old is that person? Am I talking to a senior customer right now on the phone, or is it someone much younger? And that information can also be used as part of the personalization with the agent. If you have someone that's calling in, they're flagged as a senior citizen, and all of a sudden the words they're saying indicate that this person might be falling victim to a romance scam, you're able to tailor the conversation, maybe escalate that call to someone who can explain what's happening, try to prevent them from falling victim to such a scam. And, if your customer is calling in and you're expecting to have an 85-year-old calling, but it sounds like a 30-year-old, well, you might want to tailor the experience in a different direction. You might start thinking, well, maybe this is, abuse or family fraud. So all of the factors that you would use, like age detection, maybe to prioritize someone or to make sure you provide them a very specific kind of service, you can use the same information from the same platform to raise flags when there's reasons to be concerned with the interaction that's taking place. And I think that's something we tend to forget. We tend to look at personalization as, a way to upsell and service faster, but there's security also that comes with it.
And thank you for that. And I know we're going to keep moving on. I have one more question, Shelby, to you, but also I know we're going to be talking about 5 principles coming up real soon, and I want to get to them, but not yet. Audience, when you think of personalization, what is keeping you up at night right now? Give me one-word answers or one sentence. When you think of personalization, what is keeping you up with that concept right now? We as brand leaders have to figure this out. Shelby, before we go into the 5 principles, can we just talk about effective CX and what does that look like in the most simplest terms?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in general, the best customer experience is going to put the customer in the driver's seat, right? Providing the customer with the opportunity to engage across any channel that they want to, right? And we're seeing that landscape change constantly, right? There's, up to 7 different channels some organizations are trying to manage. Through those, we want to offer as much self-service as possible. Make it easy for customers to do the things that they need to do. And then, of course, making sure that live agents are available if and when they're needed. But the thing to remember, I think, is really that customers really want to self-serve. And what I see across our clients, is that a large portion of people that actually call in to the IVR are ignoring the IVR and asking to speak to an agent because they started in digital channels. So you really want to understand why customers are contacting you and look for ways to solve it across all your channels. So as you do that, this means that, the level of personalization that you have might mean that you're not contacting your customers very much because you're leveraging AI-driven personalization. So you're not maybe having people communicating with customers, but they're getting their needs met. And that's primarily because you've identified exactly how they want to connect with you, how they want to engage. And that may mean that, they receive an email once a month or, confirmations of changes onto their account or changes to an order or, a flight or something like that is all sent over text. So one example, I can keep going, Chad, all day. So I know we need to move on. So
we've got a time check here because
yeah.
but I love it, Shelby. I love the passion. The good news, audience, Shelby is so willing to give of her time and attention and thought leadership to the community. We just need to harness that power and energy and knowledge. I know that you've come up with 5 principles for successful personalization. Let's help the audience identify these principles. And I got a couple quick questions around each one, but I want to keep moving. So if we go to the first principle slide, I assume it's up on the screen right now?
It is.
Okay, Shelby, reaction quickly.
All right, you got it. So the first principle is seeing it from the customer's point of view. And I have a great example to share. So let's say a customer is calling in about an order status. This is a really great opportunity to see it from their perspective, right? How can you provide helpful and relevant information? Well, we worked with a big box retailer and we noticed that when a customer was calling in about order status, they were basically just telling the customer that the order was on its way. So no estimated delivery date, no tracking number, not really helpful, which resulted in a lot of transfers to live agents and of course was costing them a lot of money. So we listened to those agent calls and we uncovered that the agents were providing the customer with a tracking number and a phone number of the shipper. So this was a really great opportunity for AI-driven personalization because once the customer calls in and the verification is successful, so voice biometrics, which Simon was talking about, we can provide them with that tracking number and the number of the shipper through that AI so that the customer can be on their way and get the information that they need. So that's really what we're talking about in an example of, how do we see it from the customer's point of view when we're providing information to it? Is it helpful? Is it relevant? Does it solve their need?
So Shelby, I'm going to ask a question here and I'm going to challenge you quickly when we get to the next principle. And we all ask this. What about avoiding the creepiness factor, or do we ever get too personal? This comes up all the time, the balance. Give us some answers.
Yeah, it's a super fine line, right? So a key factor with AI-driven personalization is that we're not talking about information coming from outside sources. We're talking about information that's known to the organization based on interactions that you've had with the customer. So where it gets a little creepy is that, an Accenture actually had a report on this that said 60% of consumers felt that it was too personal when brands leverage information that they had not shared directly. So the fine line is, let me give you an example. Let's say location-based services, right? That's a really great tool. So you're flying out on vacation, you've landed, and your carrier offers you a tailored roaming package. Super useful, not intrusive. But a creepy factor might be, you're walking past a drugstore and a coupon pops up for, medicated foot cream, super creepy. So again, it's definitely a line you don't want to cross. You've got to leverage the information that has been directly shared with you and don't seek information from outside sources for personalization efforts.
I'll add to that. When we're talking about seeing it from the customer's point of view, we should also never forget that customers are used to the whole security measures that we have in place. When you start doing personalization and remove those barriers because you're using, let's say, biometrics on top of it, it might be very unsettling for some customers because you're, very easy and transparently, someone calls in, they say, I'm calling to transfer some money, and the response they get is, sure, no problem, the money's been transferred. Their perception is that no security measures were taken because your personalization is so good that listening to the original intent, it's the right person, you're confident, and you're letting them go through. So having some form of disclosure that there's going to be some technologies that might add that creepiness factor or might make them insecure with the transaction is key to making sure they don't lose confidence because you're doing it so well that they don't see where the security is around them.
Yeah, and good points. I'm glad it's all recorded. I mean, we could, debate this, and I guess there's the balance. It's knowing the customer, depending on your brand and all the other pieces. We've had more people join since we started. I'm Chad McDaniel, Execs in the Know, founder, president, and we had Shelby and Simon from Nuance joining us today. My internet service area went out right before the start of the webinar, so the voice you keep hearing not on camera is me. But again, I'm very, very grateful to have Shelby and Simon's thought leadership joining us today on the topic. Shelby and Simon, let's move to slide 2, or the second principle, excuse me. And as we look at this particular slide, who wants to start? Shelby or Simon, you want to put some flavor to this?
Yeah, sure. I've got it, Chad. So this is really all around, being proactive and timely. And proactive notification is one of my favorite tricks to work with clients on, because for some reason these proactive engagements have really taken a back seat, and they're so useful in the customer journey. And you might not realize it, but when customers have been polled about notifications or their experience, only 13% of them actually complain about proactive customer service. When Gartner did the same research on, the NPS scores and effort scores and all those kinds of things, value-driven scores, they actually saw a 1-point increase in all of those scores with proactive notifications. So what do we mean by that? So, for example, a utility company might send outage notifications, right, for their customers about what's happening. But how do you take it further? How do you make it use that personalization a little bit more? How do you make it more timely? Well, we've got one of our customers actually doing proactive notifications about storms that are being tracked, or heat index considerations, and all kinds of things like that. So really potentially saving lives. Another couple examples from like a telco perspective, it might be around upgrade eligibility or auto pay notifications, which is really important in telco because some have a 30-day billing cycle, which means your bill's not always on the same day. So that might mean something to people and really kind of help their experience. But all these are really important. And if you're doing it over SMS, you can also integrate it with a virtual agent. So take example of shipping notification, right? Like, let's say I get a notification, a signature is required, I'm not going to be home. I could connect directly to the virtual agent, have my package held for me or redirected. So there's all kinds of things that, we can do with proactive notifications to really make that experience effortless, provide the customer with relevant, important information that makes a difference to how they engage with your brand. Simon, anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I'd say, when we start doing those proactive notifications, and I'm going to take your telco example, right? It's also important to take one step back and not just, 3 months ahead of your contract renewal, push to everyone and upgrade for the device. That's where the very high level of personalization can make a difference. Because if you send to a customer that never upgrades their phones and offer to upgrade, you're opening a possibility that a fraudster might intercept it and then leverage that personalization. So you really want to understand your customers' behaviors. You want to understand, who are my customers that I want to send that offer to, because I know that there's a very high chance that they will take it, instead of sending it to everyone and potentially, just leaving the door open as a kind of an all-you-can-eat for fraudsters that could intercept those messages, whether they're by email or even SMS. And I love that example, because that's always finding the right balance can be very challenging. But if you can have those big campaigns and tailor them to some very specific groups of end customers, this is where you get the most value with the lowest possible level of risk.
Well, let's put the audience to work. I love our team, and I love everyone in the community as far as your participation. I got another poll question. Shelby, is the poll, if we could put the poll question up and let me know when it's up.
It's up.
Okay, team, I need your help here, please. Leaders learning from leaders. What is the difference between personalization versus hyper-personalization? Give me your thoughts. So take a minute, put in your thought. I'd be very curious to what the audience is going to say here. And I'll give you guys a couple more seconds to keep voting. And we go about 10 seconds left. So if you haven't voted, please get your vote in. It's important to get as many as we can just to get an aggregate of the conversation. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's close the poll. And Shelby, you're going to have to read these off to me.
Yep.
What you're seeing.
Happy to. So the question is, what is the difference between personalization versus hyper-personalization? The number one reply or answer is hyper-personalization is more intrusive. Number two, hyper-personalization includes real-time information. Three, personalization is only basic information. And four, trendy words that mean the same thing.
Okay. What's your reaction to one and two, Shelby and Simon? What's your reaction?
Well, hyper-personalization is, exactly what we're talking about today is really leveraging AI in real time to deliver more relevant content, products, and service information to customers.
And we're looking at it, and yeah, it can be more intrusive, and I think it really talks to what we said before, right? You don't want to look too creepy as you're using that information that's being provided to you. But I think when it's done properly, it can also allow you to be less intrusive, right? And I'm going to take, again, a very fraud-centric example, but when someone calls in and they're either calling to do an insurance claim or trying to dispute a transaction, for example, in case of card issuers, if you try to investigate by asking all the time all the same questions, for a lot of people, it's going to feel very intrusive because you're asking all of these questions out of necessity. If you have hyper-personalization in place and you're able to ask just a few questions and determine if that person's trying to deceive you versus if that person is being truthful, then that hyper-personalization actually works in your favor and you become less intrusive in the conversation. If the person sounds truthful and they're answering your first couple questions, you can let them go, and you only use the hyper-personalization to identify the ones that do deserve additional questions, and you provide your agents with the very specific questions you want them to ask. So I think if it's not done right, it can be more intrusive. When it is done right, it gives the impression of actually being less intrusive. And it's very difficult to demonstrate because obviously when it's done right, nobody really notices. But interesting to see. And I think, the real-time information is definitely key because you want to help the agents leverage that information as it comes in during their conversation, and you don't want them to have to analyze the transactional profile of their customers as they're talking to them. You want the AI-driven engine to provide them with the next steps and the key points of that hyper-personalization in the interaction.
So Simon and Shelby, a couple of comments here. So today, where we sit, hyper-personalization does exist. There are brands at this level. That's correct, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What percent in the ecosystem do you believe it is? Less than 10%, 20%, 30%?
I think it's probably 10% or less. Simon, what do you think?
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
So 3 years from now, where do you see that going? What's that percentage going to be? Best guess.
It's got to be 50% or greater if we're doing our job.
Okay. I would like to be optimistic, but 3 years from now, it's going to be higher. I don't know if we're going to be at 50%, but we as CX leaders, we have to get our head around this and understand it. If there is one key thing for us to be thinking about and take away in this particular side of the conversation, what would that be that you'd want to suggest to this community?
Simon, you want to take that one first?
You're the expert, Shelby. I'll take you on that.
I'm challenging you too. I trust you. Shelby, what's the one thing that you would challenge us to be thinking about as CX leaders?
I think you have to really look at what data you have about your customers and how that data feeds back into your customer journeys and the use cases. Why do they have to contact you, and what do you know about them that can help eliminate that? And I think that first principle around putting yourself in the customer's shoes, like that is so key, because if you've got developers creating NLU responses or AI responses to the customer that says your package is on the way. So it's like if this then what statements, right? It's not relevant or helpful, and that's what's really important to your customer.
And I'd add to that, think of all the channels where you want to bring that personalization, because the worst thing you can do is focus only on one channel and then create a huge discrepancy in the experience that your customers will have if they go on the chat or in an IVR. So what we should think about is, as we do this, how do we do it kind of progressively across all channels, and at the same time see how our customers, what are their journey through all the channels? What do they start in digital and finish over the phone? And when do they start over the phone and maybe finish on a chat session? And make sure that if I go in the chat, I don't get a much, much better, more integrated, personalized service that I couldn't get by speaking to someone. Because that's going to be quite annoying for a customer. They don't understand why they don't have the same quality of service across channels.
Good. Well, Shelby, you're a Jim. You noticed how Simon said ladies first on that question. I challenged you guys. Let's go to principle number 3. Let's dive. What's the next principle 3? We've got 5 principles. We're at number 3.
Yep. So this is really about planning for a graceful recovery. So it was just recognizing that nobody's going to get this right, the personalization right 100% of the time. So what we want to do is really be smart about it. So a great example might be, let's say you bought a pair of shoes online and they arrive the next day, and afterwards you saw the same pair at another retailer for $50 less. So the first thing you do is go on to a retailer's site to chat. And their chat is front-ended by a virtual agent. And based on what they know about you, they're automatically saying, hey, are you happy with those sneakers? And if not, can I help you arrange a return? So there's an assumption there, right? As there's personalization happening, and there's an assumption that's not necessarily right. But when you reply, you're saying, hey, the sneakers are great, but I want to do a price match because I found a better price somewhere else. So the VA here is then immediately able to start that process of matching the price. So you're still having a good experience, even though that personalization might have been considered a fail because it wasn't exactly what the intent was when you came on board, right? So there's always going to be something that you assume based on the majority of the population that's a little bit different. But the key here is that you want to be responsive, you want to be easy to do business with, and that's really going to help improve loyalty, right? Because loyalty is all about that effortless factor. So what's more is that the retailer here also didn't lose the sale, right? So the customer was able to do all the things they needed to do. The VA was able to handle the price match. And so that's really important. We want to be able to leverage the technology and the transactional capabilities. So as Simon said, service parity is really important. If you can handle returns and price match, the kinds of things on the phone, you want to make sure you can do it, in the VA and in other places. So that you've got to look at that and recognize that it's not always going to be perfect. I'm kind of cutting that short because we got to keep going.
No, I think it's good. And I'd say, and we talked about it, connecting every channel, because you also want to avoid the very avoidable mistakes you could make. For example, if someone called you in saying that the pair of shoes they received was underwhelming and of bad quality, the last thing you want to do is, if they're going on the chat because they want to follow up on that return package that they sent, you don't want to start by saying, what about that new pair of shoes you just got? Do you enjoy them? They will feel that this is very automated and cold. So being able to tie every channel and leverage the data across channel will avoid some of these very uncomfortable situations that you will have to recover from. And in all cases, every failed interaction or every failure to understand what they want is an opportunity to improve the model, is an opportunity to label that interaction and reuse it to create a new flow of interaction that will allow future customers to succeed in that personalized experience.
Well stated. I'll forever remember the words "recover gracefully" at the start of this session, and my internet went out. So that's a different meaning to me. But let's go to principle number 4. We've got 5, and I want to get to any Q&A here. So let's look quickly at 4 and what this means. And I hope the audience is enjoying the conversation and some of the learning we're sharing. So principle 4, Shelby?
Yeah, so principle 4 is around personalized, automated, and the human experience. So it's all around it's better together, right? Because automation is a phenomenal tool, but we can't really lose sight of the human connection. And at Nuance, we know that our best experiences are a mix of both. So we're let the customer decide when and what they need in the moment. And what I love about this is that the customers, what we see across our clients is customers want to self-serve. That's what they want to do. And when they can't, they need to talk to someone. So the idea is that the more we automate, the more the opportunity is for your agents to be available for the people who really need them, and they're provided with the relevant information to make the transition seamless and help and support your customers in the best way possible. Simon, do you want to add anything around fraud in terms of that covering personalization and the interaction there?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned it earlier, right? It's not just about personalizing the chatbots or the IVRs. It's also about personalizing what your agents are going to ask, right? So deceit detection being one example. You don't want to always ask the same questions and follow a blueprint. You want the personalization to also allow an agent to know what to ask, when to ask it, how to ask it. So I touched on it before, so I think we can move with the next one, Chad.
Real quick on this, Shelby, Simon, honestly, how difficult it is to get to this stage, personalized human and automated solutions. I know it depends, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult is it?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about prioritization of what you're doing in the business. So, I mean, most enterprise clients want to make money, save money, and have good customer experience. And creating this personalization and having this automated, driven personalization that actually supports the experience does all of those things, and really creates that opportunity for everything else to fall in place.
Okay. And I think it also comes down to the kind of partner that you're working with.
Yeah.
Some personalization solutions will just be technology dropped in front of you, and as an end customer, you have to use it, you have to understand it, and you have to start building all of that complex interaction flow. If you're working with solution providers that act as partners and can accompany you and guide you through that process, it'll allow you to get to some good savings and maximize the value that you get from the technology much quicker, but also a much more seamless transfer of knowledge to give you the opportunity to then keep working on developing those personalized interactions. So if you are working with solution that's just packaged and you have to deal with it versus working with a partner, I think that can make a huge difference in how well you'll succeed in your personalization projects.
Yeah, that's such a great point.
And Shelby, Simon, everyone listening, we're all consumers, and we probably have a story where personalization was tried and maybe didn't get to the effect that they were intending to do, but we'll try to save some of that for Q&A.
Well, it goes right to number 5, Chad. That's perfect.
Let's go 5.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into number 5, which is always be optimizing. And so what, Chad, you just said is that all of us have had an experience where personalization wasn't perfect, or the experience wasn't perfect. And the key thing that we have to remember is that the customer journey, all the touch points of influence, all the channels that are used to engage, these aren't things that we set and forget. The landscape is constantly changing. Your business is changing, your policies, your processes, your people are changing. So we have to recognize that as we solve for one use case, maybe that's low-hanging fruit today, other ones are going to pop up, and you're continually evolving that experience. So just like that shoe example with the return and the price match, that probably wasn't the first problem that they solved for, right? But they got to it by solving other use cases, and then they were able to tackle the tough ones. So we really have to think about this as something that is constantly evolving throughout the lifetime of your business, really. Simon, anything you would say there?
It never ends. It's a continuous. Simon, any other words of wisdom on always be optimizing? And then I want to jump into some questions.
Nothing wiser than that. How could I add to this? Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm in full agreement with Shelby here.
So, Shelby and Simon, let me just ask a direct question. And our gatherings are always about thought leadership, not a sale model type of thing. But I have to ask the question, what makes Nuance so different in your perspective? I think Microsoft acquired you guys not too long ago, but what is the Nuance difference? And again, I'm not mean this from a salesy. I'm just trying to understand, what is the differentiator do you truly believe about Nuance?
Yeah, so I'll start because I've actually worked at some of our competitors, right, in the past. So The differentiator about Nuance is that we have all of the solutions in the customer journey, right? And we work across almost every vertical, and we leverage those things to support each one. So we're not just looking to optimize one touch point of influence or one channel. Here's a really great example. We did an analysis at a big box retailer for just understanding why people were calling in. But then we said, oh, you know what? Let's use another lens. Let's look at this from a fraud perspective. And we looked at repeat callers, and we found, fraud callers that were calling this big box retailer 6,000, 3,000, 2,000 times in a week. So we have this great opportunity to leverage all the lenses of the customer journey and really understand what the opportunities are to influence operational savings, whether it's like training of your agents or changes of policy and process, and also how to really leverage technology to create an effortless experience. That's my answer, chat.
And I'd say, there's huge benefits to working with Nuance, where we're not only developing the technology, we're not only deploying it, but we're really doing everything.
Yeah.
You can find personalization solutions out there, like I said, where it's just buying the solution, you have to figure it out. And in other cases, you'll work with a partner that will deploy technology that they don't really own. When you're working with a company like Nuance that has hundreds of people in R&D working constantly to improve the core technology, you know that you can have influence on the roadmap, that your input will be taken into consideration, and that you're working with experts that are very, very close to the developers of the tech that will be deployed. And technology that will be deployed, like Shelby said, across all channels for all your needs with the customer journey, which also allows to embed security at every step of the way. Proper biometrics authentication, good fraud detection platforms on every single channel, all within one platform. And that's really what ultimately we see that more and more big organizations are trying to get to. Reduce the number of vendors you have to manage, reduce the integration points, and really have a solution that's being designed from the ground up to work across every single channel. And I think that's the huge difference.
And Shelby, Simon, thank you. The reason I wanted to ask that question is there is a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown that we hear a lot in the community. So it's perfect to get your perspective and thoughts there. I appreciate it. I want to move into some Q&A for the audience here, and I know there's going to have to be some questions because we've covered quite a bit here, and I'm looking forward to it. But as we're moving to that, I guess, is there anything we're leaving out here that needs to be addressed? There's a lot of topics I guess we could take on, but I mean, is there anything else that we really want to make sure we're addressing here that maybe we haven't discussed, Shelby and Simon?
I'd say that, to do good personalization, you need a huge amount of data. You will need to collect a lot of information, and we hear more and more the concerns of citizens around their privacy and protection of data. So the more you move towards more personalization, the more you're going to accumulate that information, and the more it becomes important from an organization's perspective to ask yourself, am I collecting data that I always need, or am I collecting just everything I have, even though I might not use 80% of it? How long am I keeping it for? What am I using it for? Do I get rid of that data once it's not of use to me anymore? And I think as we move there, we're going to have to think more and more about data privacy, data protection. That's going to be a huge concern or preoccupation, let's say.
Yeah, and I would just add along with that data protection, Simon, it's really breaking down your silos. So look at your customer journey and how your customers engage with that, with all of, whether it's phone, digital engagement, chat, and VA, all of those elements, and to look at them as part of a customer journey and an experience. So, look at your service parity, what's happening, can I do the same thing across the board? And then also recognize that what you uncover in one solution might be beneficial to another solution. So be holistic in how you evaluate your customer journey and your experience, and get everybody in the room. get everybody, because traditionally companies are managing how they engage with their customers in silos. So you've got one team on IVR, one team in digital, and that creates a big disconnect because, as Simon pointed out, like you want to be able to have your identification and authentication seamless across those solutions, but you also want that personalization to be there. So get those teams talking and break down the silos.
Audience, I need your help, audience, please. Everything we've talked about today, what is the challenge? What is the thought? What's working, what's not working? What questions, what clarification? We have to get this right. We have to continue to figure this out. Been talking about it for a number of years in different ways. So where we stand today, August of 2021, what is the challenge? What do we agree, disagree? What are we seeing? And Simon and Shelby, is maybe comments are coming in, questions are coming in, or anything. I'm going to leave it to the two of you to kind of look at that. But audience, I greatly would appreciate capturing your thoughts. So if you could just take a minute and give me some feedback. Anything come in, Shelby or Simon, that maybe we can quickly address, either a comment or a question?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question that we can address. And I would also just say that if we don't get to any of the questions, we'll follow up. So there's some other questions in here. We'll definitely, be connecting with you and following up afterwards. But so the first question that I see here is, what would you recommend as a first step in implementing personalization? If you don't have a team, money, or tools, what's the best first step an organization could take? And this is from Alexis Williams. And I would say, Alexis, the first step is really understanding what data you have available and how you're collecting data about your customers. And then there's a whole host of different kinds of things you could do from that point. So I could follow up with you in more detail, but I want to make sure Simon has a chance to address anything he would want to add to this question.
Well, I saw a question come regarding, different languages, different cultures, like how does personalization work in that context? And I just wanted to, highlight the fact that it's not as much of a challenge today as it was before, right? At least from a security perspective, language doesn't change anything. Your voice is your voice. We'll be able to give you that seamless authentication regardless of which language you're speaking. And now with proper solutions, and that's another advantage of working with a company like Nuance that has deployments in over 85 languages, all over the world, that can understand the subtleties and the intricacies of different languages and dialects and accents. All of this is also important, right? Because you don't want to have a solution that will only work for a subset of your population. But when you pick the right partner, it's not a challenge as much as you might think it is.
And Simon, just real quick, anything against that first question, which was, what would you recommend as the first step in implementing personalization?
When you don't have team, money, or tools,
yeah.
You'll have to find one of those. Have to find one of those. Personalization is not a silver bullet, and I'm not here to tell you that you can do it by snapping your fingers. It will cost something and require resources, because as it is for customer service, and as it is for any IT project, and as it is as for anything when you run a business, it requires investment and commitment. So if you want your personalization to succeed and you don't have those, I'd say your first step is get a clear commitment and focus from the board, from the executives, from the higher ups, so that they can understand the value of investing in a project to personalize your customer experience. Because it is an ongoing project. It's not something that can be done just once with 1 year's budget. It really becomes a whole new center of operation that requires long-term commitment. So first step, if you don't have the resources, go get the resources, but get a commitment from the people that can give you those budgets.
Well, I know we've ran out of time, and it always happens so fast. I wish we had more time. I will want to mention that I think we have a white paper. It's a great educational piece that I think takes a deeper dive into the principles. We will make sure, if Nuance can work with us, we'll make sure that everyone gets a copy of that white paper. I think it's a great educational piece that carries on. So Shelby and Simon, I have to say thank you, everything you guys do for the community and what you're leading the charge of customer success in our industry. Thank you so much. And folks, you don't have to do this alone. There's so many people in execs in the know that we're sharing ideas and best practices. Get involved. Just don't go alone at this. Our customers' demands and expectations aren't going to change. They're going to get more complex. There's so many navigation paths we have as an industry. So we're out of time. So behalf of myself, Chad McDaniel, execs in the know, thank you, everyone. Keep customer number one. Stay well, stay safe. Shelby, Simon, thank you so much. Be well. We'll
Thank
conclude
you.
today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.